The author of Slaughterhouse-Five, Kurt Vonnegut, uses science fiction in his novels and other works to characterize the world and nature of existence as he experienced them. Tragic events in his novels are oftentimes assumed to be influenced by events that occurred to him as a young man. Slaughterhouse-Five was influenced from Vonnegut surviving as a prisoner of war in World War II during the Allied firebombing that destroyed Dresden. Slaughterhouse-Five is a semi-autobiography of Kurt Vonnegut's life. Billy Pilgrim, the main character, lives through and experiences much of the same events which Vonnegut did while fighting as a young man in World War II. As a little background, in 1944, Vonnegut was shipped to Europe with the 106th Infantry Division. His unit was destroyed and he wandered behind enemy lines for several days until he was captured and sent to be a prisoner of war at a camp near Dresden, the architectural jewel of Germany. He was put to work underground in a meat locker when American and British planes started firebombing the city. He and the other men that he was with, being some of the only survivors, were then assigned to remove the dead. Witnessing the firebombing of Dresden and the destruction that the Allied forces caused took a toll on Vonnegut. He viewed the bombing of Dresden as completely unjustified and senseless, and for this reason he looks at events as completely random and with no real sequence or meaning. This is carried over to the novel as the main character, Billy Pilgrim, does not go through life in a chronological order, as he time travels through all aspects of his life, from birth to death, and reliving moments he has already experienced. Due to Vonnegut's disgust of the events which happened in Dresden, one of the main themes of the book is justness of war. When we spoke about justness in war in class, the criteria for deciding whether actions were just or unjust, it was distinction of civilians from combatants, military necessity, fair treatment, no evil in itself, and proportionality. And it seems that the firebombing of Dresden could not be justified by any of these criteria just listed. Now a little history lesson. Dresden was called the Florence of the Elbe and was one of the most beautiful cities for its architecture and museums. The firebombing of Dresden occurred from February 13th to February 15, 1945, which was during the final months of World War II. British and American forces dropped more than 3,900 tons of high explosive bombs and combustible devices, which destroyed 15 square miles of the city center. It is still unknown how many civilians died from the bombing. Some sources say it is possible that as little as 35,000 died, while others, including Vonnegut, cite 135,000 dead civilians. Previous bombings, although still very destructive and upsetting, were of military necessity. For example, the bombing of Hamburg was justified because of the city's importance as a port and manufacturing center. However, Dresden had no military advantage and was a refuge for children and the elderly, as well as hundreds of thousands of civilians fleeing the Russian advance. Many historians also believe that it was unnecessary because the Allied win did not come until 3 months after the bombing. Vonnegut talked about his difficulties getting information about the bombing, and when he wrote to the Air Force, he was told it was still top-secret information. U.S. Air Force later tried to defend the attack by justifying it as a military-industrial target with rail transportation and communication center. However, it has been found that the communication infrastructures and bridges were outside the city's center and were not targeted. The mass area bombing of Dresden was not proportionate to the corresponding military gains. Vonnegut was quoted in an interview saying, "The Dresden atrocity, tremendously expensive and meticulously planned, was so meaningless, finally, that only one person on the entire planet got any benefit from it. I am that person. I wrote this book, which earned a lot of money for me and made my reputation such as it is. One way or another, I got $2 or $3 for every person killed. Some business I'm in." Teleology is another idea that we talked about in class and is one of the themes in Slaughterhouse-Five. Teleology is the belief that final causes exist and basically that we were put onto the world and have our lives already planned out for us. In the novel, Billy Pilgrim was captured by aliens which resembled plungers called the Tralfamadorians. He was then brought to Tralfamador and kept in a zoo to be observed by these plunger-like creatures. Billy Pilgrim learns from Tralfamadorians that Earthlings are the only ones in the universe that have this idea of free will. Free will is the idea that we have the ability to alter our own future. Tralfamadorians live in the fourth dimension. They explain the fourth dimension as being able to see all moments occurring simultaneously and continuously, and that all time has already happened, and it is because of this that they accept their fates. As Earthlings, we look at time as a linear process, like beads on a string, as the Tralfamadorians explain it. We believe that once a moment is gone forever. Billy Pilgrim learns that we cannot change anything about time, it just is the way it is. Due to the idea of teleology, and now that Billy Pilgrim knows that this idea of free will is a lie, he has a motto of "so it goes," which he constantly says throughout the novel. Billy Pilgrim says this when any tragic event occurs, and most frequently when he talks about the death of someone, even his own wife. At first it just seems to be a dismissal of emotion, and that he really does not care, but truthfully it is because he looks at life as the Tralfamadorians do. The Tralfamadorians see a dead person and just think that they are in a bad condition at that particular moment. However, at many other moments, they are just fine, so they just choose to look at those other moments. Billy Pilgrim says, "The most important thing I learned on Tralfamador was that when a person dies, he only appears to die. He is still very much alive in the past, so it was very silly for people to cry at his funeral. All moments, past, present, and future, always have existed, always will exist."